Notice some of these questions, like this one right here. What are the benefits which in this life do accompany or flow from justification, adoption, and sanctification? Real easy first grade questions. You know, stuff everybody knows. This is like seminary today. This is Bible school, and we're doing it in first grade. Why? Because that's the whole point of education. See, this is where Christians took their Christian values and said, we want to make sure that we take the Word of God and apply it to everything we do, and we apply it to education. In fact, this is why Sam Adams, he actually reprinted the New England Primer for his state of Massachusetts. It's why Noah Webster reprinted this book for his state of Connecticut. That's why Benjamin Franklin reprinted this book for his state of Pennsylvania. We had founding fathers reprint this book, which, by the way, we actually reprinted the book the founding fathers used, and it's available on our website. I actually think I'll have some here tomorrow if you guys are able to come back. But you see the influence of Christianity. In fact, when you look at universities, in 1860, 246 colleges, only 17 were not denominationally affiliated. Almost every university there was started by churches. It was Christians who said, you know what? We should have some education. We should be the ones to do it. And they took their faith and they applied it to what they did. In fact, when you look at college professors, 91% of college professors, college presidents were gospel ministers. Almost everybody that ran a school was a pastor. You move forward to 1884, there were 370 colleges. 83% were denomination affiliated. Churches were starting schools. Churches were shaping the very framework, the form of what we did. And that's why when you look at our nation was formed and framed on Christian principles, on Christian values, on pastors, on Christian leaders who took the Word of God and applied it to life we live. Reverend Matthias Burnett, as I wind this thing down, Reverend Matthias Burnett actually was a pastor who went in 1803 and preached before the Connecticut legislature. And he goes and preaches before them, and this is actually where John Trumbull is governor of the state at the time. And he goes and he preaches before all the newly elected officials. But they had a balcony. And after he preached to the elected officials, he looked up at the balcony. And he pointed his finger up in the balcony. And he said, to God and posterity, you are accountable for your rights and your rulers. Now, today, most of us would think, you know what? I'm not responsible for what's going on. In fact, I didn't even vote last election. Can't blame me. But you know what's interesting? This again, Jesus deals with this concept. Because Jesus taught a parable in Luke 19. In Luke 19, there's a master talking with a servant. And the master is putting his servant in charge of his possessions. And the master says, I'm about to leave and go on a journey. And what he tells his servant is he says, you need to occupy until I return. In English, you are responsible until I get back. We are stewards with what God has given us. Now, today, we have a hard time as Christians thinking about this because one of the big thoughts today is, you know what? Jesus is coming back. Now, by the way, I'm a born-again believer. I love Jesus with all my heart. I hope he comes back in the middle of this presentation before we finish. It'll be the best thing ever. I love it. But you know what happened is you have people like Harold Camping. I don't know if you guys heard about this out here. May 21st. It's the end of the world. And it shaped people's thinking. People begin to do things differently, thinking Jesus is coming. Now, being the nice guy I offered to take everybody's stuff that was trying to get rid of their stuff, get ready for Jesus. I said, you just send it on over. I'll take care of it all for you. Well, see, there's a problem. The Bible makes it really clear that you and I don't know when he's coming back. Well, what does that mean? That means we're supposed to live ready to give an account for what we've done, not sell everything we have and sit around and wait. See, the problem is too many Christians are not stepping up and accepting responsibility going, you know what, I'm going to get involved. God left me here. As long as I'm here, I'm going to make a difference. I'm getting involved in the culture, in the community, in my church. I'm getting involved. We have people, especially in our generation, that are going, you know what, I'm just waiting for God to return because the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait and watch. Do you know as a Christian, you don't have the luxury of doing nothing? You don't. That's not an option God gave us. God said, you're responsible. Jesus said, you occupy until I come, until I return. Which is why the Reverend Burnett points to all the people up on the balcony and says, to God and posterity, you are accountable for your rights and your rulers. He went on and said, let not your children have reason to curse you for giving up those rights and prostrating those institutions which your fathers delivered to you. We have a responsibility. Now, obviously, we have to understand, the only way things work well is God's way. It's God's principles. Now, by the way, you don't have to be a Christian to do it God's way. And God set out principles like all hard work brings a profit. If you work hard, you can be successful and profitable. It's still God's principle that you work hard and then it works well. But God's principles are what made us so exceptional for so long. And we've had a generation that sat back, Christians that sat on the sideline and didn't get involved to make a difference. We have to be a people now that say, you know what? I might not be able to change it for me right now, but I can save it for future generations. For my kids and my grandkids, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to make a difference. And I love what President Ronald Reagan said. President Ronald Reagan said, perhaps the greatest triumph of modern conservatism has been to stop allowing the left to put the average American on the moral defensive. Now, by the way, that's something that the liberal left does a lot. In fact, if you are part of the Tea Party, you have been called communists and terrorists and all kinds of things. The left loves, now by the way, you have to understand, the reason they attack you is because they can't attack the issue because they're wrong. So the only thing left to attack is you. But President Reagan said, you know, one of the best things has been that we've been able to overcome some of that. And he says, now, by average American, I mean the good, decent, rambunctious, and creative people who raise the families, go to church, and help out with the local library. We have great work ahead of us. Once I said, this is a wonderful time to be alive. And I meant that. I meant that we're lucky not to live in pale and timid times. We've been blessed with the opportunity to stand for something. We have good reason to be hopeful and optimistic. We've made much progress already. So let us go forth with good cheer and stout hearts. Happy warriors out to seize back a country and a world to freedom. And I'm going to end with that thought. We've been called to be happy warriors out to seize back a country and a world to freedom, especially as believers. And this is where our perspective has to change. When the Israelites are about to go and enter Canaan, they choose a leader from all 12 tribes to go and spy out the land. And the leaders go and spy out the land, and they come back. And you guys remember the story in Numbers. 10 leaders come back and say, guys, there's abundance. It's milk and honey, and there's grapes, and there's fruit and vegetables, and it's amazing. But there's giants in the land. And there were two guys, Joshua and Caleb, and said, everything they said is true, but we have God. We cannot look at our situation and go, you know what? I just don't see any hope. I just don't think it. We serve a God that parts Red Seas. We serve a God of the impossible that nothing is impossible for. But what we have to do is be the warriors and say, you know what? I'm taking up my armor and I'm marching to battle and I'm going to make a difference. We have to understand it's time for Christians to be the salt and light. If we remove light from darkness, darkness becomes greater. We have to penetrate the darkness with light. Now, I mentioned a lot about the Black Robe. We actually have a website. If you guys are interested in some of this stuff, you can go to the Black Robe, regiment.wallbuilders.com or brr.wallbuilders.com. We actually have a lot of the original sermons that are up. You actually can go through and read a lot of the original sermons. We actually have a lot of modern sermons where people have taken the Word of God and helped us see how it applies to a lot of different issues going on, a lot of really good things. If you guys want to check that out, we also have a lot of other resources available that you guys are invited to go to our website and check out. I actually will have some here tomorrow for sale if you guys want to see more. But the bottom line is it's time for Christians to be the salt and light that God has called us to be. We have to get involved. We are the ones that can save and restore this culture and this nation. But it's going to be taking God's principles, applying them back to the life we live, and us making a difference. Thank you guys so much for coming out, Pastor.